Hello everyone, this is Turin here, and welcome to another entry in our Community Cast series. In this game we're going to have a showdown between the Warriors of Chaos, who are going to be led by Uznia, and he's going to be facing off against the Wood Elves, who are going to be piloted by Onya G. So guys, it's already looking to be a pretty fun game. We do have the mighty Big Bird for the Warriors of Chaos, and then there's also a Forest Dragon, so definitely some relatively unusual picks. Granted, I think we do see quite a bit of Big Bird against Wood Elves because of his very, very high missile resist. So for the Warriors of Chaos and their army composition, it looks like he does have Forsaken out on the wings. Again, a very, very good pick, taking advantage of their high movement speed. So typically you don't see Forsaken in the middle of the formation. That's because they can outrun Eternal Guards and all of those other units and can get around the flanks and do some serious damage. So he does have two Forsaken here. It looks like he does have two on the other side. And he has a center line of Chaos Marauders who are going to be backed up by Aspiring Champions. And I really, really like this army composition so far. The Chaos Marauders actually do pretty well against Wood Elves because number one, they have Bronze Shield, so against like Missile Fire they're going to be somewhat resilient for like, what do they cost, like 300 or 400 gold? I think they're very, very good for their cost against Wood Elves, not in all matchups of course. 34 melee attack, 28 melee defense is not bad at all. That 34 melee attack will definitely help them get through some of the higher melee defense of the Eternal Guards, and of course they're going to be backed up by Aspiring Champions who are, you know, pretty much like mini chosen. So these Aspiring Champions do struggle a little bit against armor because their armor piercing, if I'm not mistaken, is somewhat low at 12. Well, I guess that's not low, but it's not high armor piercing. So against the Wood Elves, they're a pretty ideal pick. Aside from that, he does have the mighty Big Bird. So Big Bird is a pretty good choice against Wood Elves because he's extremely mobile, and you would think Wood Elves would have a lot of good answers for him because you're like, oh, he's a big target, so he can be focused on about missiles. Not the case. So for any of you guys that haven't seen the mighty Big Bird before, he does have 70% missile resist and 25% magic resist. So against like Starfire Shafts, which are the kind of the intuitive pick against Chaos, he's going to be very tough to take down. Causes fear, causes terror, he's unbreakable. Searing Doom isn't bad against like the Wood Elf missile lines, and on top of that, the Plague of Rust is, I mean, it's not that great against Wood Elves, but it's such a cheap, good utility ability that I honestly think that it's probably still worth bringing. Then he does also have the Transmutational Lead. Top of that, he does have two Poison Hounds, which are also a good pick, good at like kind of tangling Wild Riders and allowing your Forsaken to get into them. And then he does have some Dragon Ogres, who are kind of an anti-large armor-piercing unit. So if there is kind of a wild card anti-meta pick, bringing like Durthu and a bunch of Treekin, it's really nice to have these Dragon Ogres. So that's pretty much it for the Chaos Army. For the mighty Wood Elves, they do have some Wild Riders over here in Deep Vanguard, and Wild Riders are a very, very good pick at riding down Forsaken. Now, if Forsaken get the charge on the Wild Riders and get the initiative, the Wild Riders are going to struggle quite a bit. But if Wild Riders get that 55 charge bonus, kind of disrupt the formation with the charge, they can do very well against Forsaken. So I honestly like to bring like two groups of Wild Riders, but you just have to make sure that the Hounds don't get engaged on these, poison them, and then the Forsaken, you know, follow up from there. For his front line, he has a bunch of Eternal Guards mixed in with Wildwood Rangers. So Wildwood Rangers are a very expensive unit. And my one critique of these guys in this build is that they're very squishy. They have 40 armor, their melee defense is, you know, a little bit above average. But against Marauders and Forsaken, they'll take a lot of damage. And I don't know how much I like them. Granted, they do pretty well against like large targets, obviously. So against Chaos Knights and you know, I think what is their anti-large bonus? So let's go ahead and check here. Put this great mystery to rest. It is 12. So if they are able to get on some of the Shaggots or Big Bird, they'll do some good damage, but still, you know, a very, very squishy unit for their cost. So aside from that, Eternal Guards and Wildwood Rangers in the front line, Glade Guards with Starfire Shafts, as you would think, because again, armor piercing against Chaos is kind of like just the traditional line of thought. Forest Dragon up here, who actually doesn't have anti-large, but with that poison attack and heavy armor piercing, like, it'll do pretty well. Like, if he's able to get this Forest Dragon and then this Glade Lord, like, on top of Big Bird will take some serious damage. So it's definitely going to be very, very trying, because he doesn't have a lot of backline defense aside from those Wild Riders. Like, it's going to be tough to deal with all that. Like, that's a very wide line, and typically when I play Chaos against Empire, Wood Elves, or any of those other type of missile factions, I really like to go wide like this. It's very tough to deal with. So you can see the Chaos Marauders and the boys are kind of advancing, and the mighty Forest Dragon and his buddy over here just kind of looking for opportunities, just scouting things out, able to see pretty much everything that the Chaos player has. In the meantime, the Wild Riders are just kind of perching up here in the forest in a very good position, because right now the Warriors of Chaos are probably going to send their Chaos Knights over here, and I actually didn't see them, so my apologies for not pointing that earlier, but these Forsaken are completely isolated. So if he gets like a really good charge like through the forest and just nails these Forsaken, they'll take massive shock damage. Their melee defense is only 20. So the way that melee defense works is there's metrics that it's weighed against melee attack. So this melee attack pretty much ensures that they're going to be taking steady contact against the 20 melee defense of these Forsaken. So I like this. It looks like Onya G is going to be sending over these guys. Well, you know, actually in retrospect, I think he probably should have ran the Dragon the other way, and then it would allow these Wild Riders to then just jump these Forsaken for free, because he's basically baiting the Cav over here, which is not where he wants them to be, because those Wild Riders will get dumpstered by Chaos Knights. It looks like Uznia is going to run into the forest with these hounds. Very, very good foresight. He's probably going to be able to find these wild riders. So very, very, you know, good intuition right there. So they're going to get discovered just now. Granted, they'll probably be able to kill these chaos hounds, you know, pretty well. But look at that reaction time from Uznia. Very well played. He senses that immediately and is going to be sending over those chaos knights, who will put those guys in a horrible trash can. So right now, these Forsaken do kind of countercharge here, and the hounds, hopefully they turn around here in a moment, but it looks like they just did ran away because they're actually shaken. But the Forsaken are going to be chasing into the forest. So the front line has engaged for the most part. You can see the Marauders engaged against these Wild Riders, and not Wild Riders, these Wildwood Rangers, excuse me. And it's not going to be a great matchup for the Wildwood Rangers because, I mean, literally you can get like three or four groups of Marauders for the cost of one of these guys. And you can see the Wildwood Rangers, I always get their name wrong, are actually taking a lot of damage. When you mix in the Aspiring Champions, they're just going to get absolutely wrecked. You can see some massive splash damage right here. So that's a big, big cost problem. And guys, the mighty Big Bird hath emerged from the forest. And he's going to be running back and shutting down these Starfire shafts. But you can also see that Onyaji has done a very good job of focusing down these Forsaken. So very well played, kind of mitigating that threat before they got in. Some Forsaken may get in, but they're wavering. They actually break right before they get into the face of those guys. But Big Bird is back here with his tentacle staff. He's just flying around, just disrupting these guys. And look at that splash damage. I mean, it looked impactful, didn't do a ton of damage. Actually, that killed 4 models, then he killed 2 right there. So Big Bird doing some work. You can also see that the dragons over here were able to isolate some of these Forsaken. They're definitely going to just tear these guys to shreds. So the Forest Dragons with their poison and the roars, and man, they're actually really cool looking. I've never really given Forest Dragons the props they deserve, but they're getting in there and just tearing up these Forsaken over here on the wings, doing a little bit of double teaming. So the Shaggots are also coming over to intercept, but they are taking a ton of missile damage. So it looks like Uznia realized that he didn't want to take that for free. A little bit of indecision there, so he's kind of hanging tight. He does have these Chaos Warhounds that definitely need to be pushing back here, but are these? Yeah, these are these. I was like, do these belong to the Wood Elves? Because they're just kind of hanging there. But a lot of missile fire coming in. Big Bird has been surrounded a little bit by spears, but he's not taking too much damage yet. Hopefully, you know, he'll be able to move those guys out. But the Chaos front line just absolutely annihilated the Wood Elf front line. Those Wildwood Rangers pretty much got outclassed by those Chaos Marauders. I mean, the Marauders here have 34 kills, and these Wildwood Rangers also have 34 kills. For that value, I honestly would have liked to see Treekin. I think Treekin are kind of like an underrated pick against the Warriors of Chaos because, you know, Chaos isn't really going to bring much anti-large aside from maybe Shaggots. But Shaggots are very vulnerable to missiles, so a lot of Chaos players are a little bit apprehensive to bring those things. And just look at these Northmen just chasing down these Wood Elves, just hacking them in the back as they try and run. And the Hound's also a very good choice here. But the Wood Elves, Onyaji has done a pretty good job doing like a bit of a tactical retreat. So he's fallen back, and he's just picking these Forsaken apart as they try and chase him down. You can see they're down to 10 models. The Shaggots here are, you know, doing their thing, kind of hustling through. It looks like they might be chasing after the dragons. You can see that Sartorial has been jumped by the Chaos Dragons, and that's exactly what, you know, the Chaos player has to watch out for, because Sartorial is good against missiles, very mobile, so he can usually outrun infantry, but big mass, like high damage units like dragons are very good against Big Bird. So Big Bird is fleeing, but he just has these ways of just slipping away from everything. He's incredibly hard to get his, you know, your paws on him in general. And it looks like these Shaggots are going to be jumping on the Forest Dragon here, and Shaggots are a pretty good counter to this type of unit, because I'm pretty sure that these dragons here have very, very good armor. Not very good, but for Wood Elf units, they have good armor of 70. So the armor piercing does actually matter there. You can also see the Shaggots are now fighting the Wild Riders, and they'll do pretty well against these guys. Again, having an anti-large bonus. And you can see that the Chaos Knights have now joined the mix. So a lot of these Wood Elf units, the Wild Riders and other guys, are in some pretty bad shape. A transmutation of lead also has gone down. So it looks like Onyaji does use the Prey of an Athrama to lock down these Chaos Knights. Very, very well played. But these Shaggots and the Poison Warhounds have kind of dragged these guys down. You can see their speed is 69 here. That's what she said. And the other Forest Dragon is now at 69. I just felt like obliged to say that. That's so terrible, but anyways, these Chaos Marauders, 64 of them, are also joined in on the chase. The Wood Elves do have a little bit of a missile line here. Their Spellslinger with the Lore of Life is also still online, so that's good. And they have a decent amount of ammunition, although it looks like they are kind of just shooting that one Forsaken right there, which probably not the best. And there's just a horde of angry Chaos just running from the hills, having defeated the Wood Elf front line. Just a combination of Forsaken, Marauders, as well as these Aspiring Champions, who are definitely some of the coolest looking units in the game. So you can see they're just charging in against some of these Wood Elf missile units, or these are actually the infantry, and man, these infantry are just going to get massacred. These Forsaken are going to just tear them to shreds. It looks like the balance of power is still somewhat even, actually. So despite, you know, it looking very bad for the Wood Elves, they still have a very healthy Lord. And Big Bird, guys, is quite low. So if Big Bird were to get like sniped or just taking some heavy burst damage from this dragon, it could be very bad for the Warriors of Chaos. And it also looks like the other Forest Dragon's in good shape. So I could have sworn they took more damage, but Must have been some Lore of Life action going on. So these missile units trying their best to kind of focus down these Chaos Warriors, and this is just a great game so far, just very, very close and back and forth. So you can see this big dragon does land in here, and a lot of these units are susceptible to terror routing. I'm sure the Forsaken do not have their frenzy anymore, as they have taken damage and their leadership is quite low. Some of these Wild Riders actually coming in the fourth quarter, but the Chaos Knights are back online. They're going to get a great charge on the back of the Spellsinger, who's now shaken, and the Shaggots, Big Bird, and these fairly healthy Forsaken with 50 models are just going to run back here and absolutely massacre these Glade Guards, who, you know, regardless, are pretty much out of ammunition, so they might as well just let the Glade Guards like just finish their ammunition on them and go elsewhere. So these Forsaken here are able to tear up this initial group, and in the back you can see this is kind of the final showdown. So pretty much the Wood Elf player needs the terror route here, because these 9 Shaggots are just so healthy, and Shaggots are just going to beat the brakes off this Forest Dragon. You can see he's just getting nuked, he's poisoned, he's just being dragged into the pits here, and he might actually have a hard time getting away, because the Dragons can push through like infantry pretty well, but against like Hounds and Shaggots, well, Shaggots more specifically, have a pretty big mass. You can see it's struggling to get out there. So, and Big Bird's hot on the chase coming in, just some wing-on-wing action. It looks like he did drop like a Transmutational Lead, or actually a Plague of Rust. So Plague of Rust actually in retrospect, not bad here, because it does make this this Glade Lord very susceptible to like Forsaken and Aspiring Champion damage and all that kind of good stuff. So the Glade Guard, the Glade Lord putting up a bit of a last stand here with his Dragon, but guys, I don't think it's going to be enough, and you can see the balance of power starting to heavily shift in the Chaos player's favor. So very well played to both Uznia and Onyaji. That was a great game, super fun. Very good composition from Uznia. That's pretty similar to the composition I usually use. Granted, I do mostly use Sigvald, and I think some of the differences is I don't think I get Chaos Knights and Shaggots. I think I just get like 2 groups of Chaos Knights, but I really liked his use of the Dragon Ogres there. They were awesome, so very well played to Uznia. Awesome build, man. Definitely some good theory crafting there. He put that Lore Metal to great use also. So that was cool to see that in action as well. As far as Onyaji's army, it's definitely cool seeing a Forest Dragon. I like the terror routing and the fact that he was able to isolate the Forsaken out in the flanks. He did a very good job of that. And though these Wildwood Rangers did rack up 93 kills, I felt like they kind of like took too much damage against those Marauders. I would have liked to see, I don't know about Dryads, like I haven't had much success with Dryads. Granted, you'd think they'd be good because of that physical resist against Chaos. But I like Treekin, maybe like 2 Treekin, because it's Forsaken take like an eternity to get through Treekin. So do Marauders, so do Aspiring Champions. Chaos Knights don't do well. Pretty much the only answer against Treekin would have been the Dragon Ogre. So I don't know, like I'm not great at Wood Elves, and Onyaji is probably more experienced than I am with them. So maybe, you know, this build has worked for him before in the past, but definitely, you know, very well played to both players. That was awesome. I mean, Onyaji had some really good tactical retreats. He pulled his missiles back and was like focusing down the Forsaken. A lot of Wood Elf players wouldn't have had like the foresight to like pull back like that. And he also was able to kind of refocus his army, get the Dragons in there, and just rally in the fourth quarter. But, you know, ultimately it was just too many Chaos troops were able to kind of crush that front line. So very well played to both players. Hopefully I get to run into you guys on ladder. And guys, thanks again for watching this Chaos Wood Elf cast. Have an excellent night and take care.